Okay, so then we are starting. It's great to have you here. I will just have a little bit of a look in the chat about where you're from. So we have Serene from Canada, TRE provider and trainer. Tatiana in Istanbul, wow. And Sylvia from the UK. Retta from Oulu, Finland. Great. And Christiana from Austria, TRE provider. Brahim E. Lin from Norway. Birgitte from Norway. Okay, great. Hi all. Great to see you again. Okay, so as I mentioned, we will talk about how we can use our understanding of TRE and the neurogenic tremors in relationship with children. So we're not talking about formal TRE, we could say, where we teach exercises and so on. We will have a talk at a later point about that topic with someone who is more experienced on that topic as well. So my expertise, we could say, is more on relationships with children, with conflict resolution, and dealing with the more challenging types of situation, and also creating learning processes of those situations. So I consult with parents and kindergartens and schools as well with regards to this topic. Mostly I focus on what we can call developmentally supportive communication and conflict resolution. But I also bring in the knowledge about neurogenic tremors, release as more like a broader topic, emotional release and physiological release, and an understanding of the brain, the neural system, and self-regulation as well. So I will, to talk about this topic, the relationships with children, the more challenging and difficult situation, and also how we can use our knowledge from TRE. I will show you some of the models that I used and that I also created to talk about these things for parents and also for kindergarten teachers in school, and so on. So, I will first start with introducing this topic, developmentally supportive communication and conflict resolution, and what I call the PLS regulation support framework. So you have a sort of a broader understanding of the topic, and then look to see how we can use TRE in this context. So first of all, I'm a TRE certification trainer. I develop various educational models, which I teach in trainings and courses, and when I consult with parents and so on. And also have a broader sort of body-oriented approach to stress and trauma as well. So I've developed various models for this purpose to make it easier to understand and teach these topics. I'll just quickly show them. I will discuss them more in detail later. So the first one is the response funnel model. Some of you might have seen it previously because it's available as a free download on my webpage. It's actually now coming in an updated version just this week. And so this is the old version, but the new version will be made available shortly and will be announced in the newsletter as well. So the other model is what I call a PLS regulation support model. We will discuss this a bit more later, but very briefly, what the model illustrates are 5 different phases in developmentally supportive communication and conflict resolution with children. So the phases are up here: prepare and involve phase, lead and stabilize, de-escalate comfort phase, repair and, okay, I changed the name recently, but it's repair and acknowledge phase at this point, and also reflect and dialogue in the end. So, of course, what we will discuss a bit later on is this third phase, the de-escalate and comfort phase, where the intensity increase, both the emotional intensity, obviously also the physiological intensity, and also the behavioral intensity might increase a lot. So we will go more in detail on this model later. So now it's probably a lot of information for a short, quick view, but it will make more sense in a little bit. So the third model in the PLS support regulation support framework is the perspective spiral. So I will not go into this model today, but I just want to quickly show it to you. So first of all, I would like to ask you a question, just to know you a little bit and your relationship to this topic. I would like to ask if you have children yourself, if you work with kids, and also, are there any type of situations that you find challenging or interesting? These situations can be very interesting as well, if you look at it from this perspective of conflict resolution. So if you write something in the chat about this, that would be great. So, or if you teach parents, do you use TRE yourself with children, teenagers, and so on? That's also very interesting to know. So, okay, these are somehow these are showing up a lot. Something happened in the construction of these PowerPoints. Duplicated slides. Okay, so Christiana writes that one difficult situation might be when a child pulls back completely and does not react to anything. Yes, that's a challenging one. It typically happens at some level up in this third phase, we could say, on the rising curve here. It could be just related to this one stopping dialogue and withdrawing, not wanting to talk. So if it's this type of withdrawal, it's sort of not super high intense necessarily. It can be various underlying dynamics, and both emotionally and relationally there. If it's more like a fear-based freeze or running away, flight reaction and hiding and so on, that's a bit different. But more like, I don't want to talk to you now, I'm pulling back and not answering, is more sort of lower on the scale, we could say. But still difficult, can be very difficult to relate to some of the communication styles and behaviors, even at the low end of this list. So it doesn't mean it's easy, even though it's not. Sometimes even actually a child who intensely wants to communicate and acts more aggressively higher up is actually sometimes easier to relate to and to communicate with than the child who doesn't want to communicate and pull back and becomes unresponsive. Okay, so we have Mary mentioned a child who does not want to talk, go outside, and just want to play at the computer, shooting people, playing some type of game, I guess. And then Brahmi says she has a daughter and also work with kids in creative self-development groups and find it difficult to handle anger without herself getting triggered and escalating the situation. Yeah. That's also very interesting, how we as adults reacts to the different both emotions of the child and how they are expressed. So some of us might be more comfortable, for instance, with anger. Others might be less comfortable with it and get triggered oneself. And but for instance, crying, some might be very comfortable with crying, others not so comfortable with crying as the adult. So obviously, what we want from our perspective as adults is to, and especially when we work with adults, or we want to work with ourselves to develop our own capacity to relate to the children in a better way, we could say, broadening our own capacity to relate to the broad range of the child's various emotions and behaviors in a way that we could say helps the child more act and also feel and act more in this green lower level here, which we can call the social engagement field, and where it's possible to communicate more with words, listening to each other, and problem solve, and so on. So that is sort of the and the goal, we could say, is to broaden both ourselves capacity as adults, our capacity to relate from this green field at the bottom, the social engagement field, and also over time help the children and support their development of their own social engagement capacity. And obviously we can do that using TRE, but in the sort of everyday type situation and environment, we can also do that to a large degree through our own communication style and developing that as well. So these things work very well together. Okay, Serene says that she don't have children. I do not work with children. And that some of the adult clients ask her to do TRE with children, and that she doesn't want to do it without a proper training. So she's here just to hear our experience. Okay, good. So I know that there is a training, actually a course available starting. It's not my course. It is actually, let me find the. It's a course by Linnea Gillen. She's an American TRE trainer. She will do a course about TRE with kids and teenagers on February 4th, on a Saturday. So I don't teach that topic specifically myself. I teach more the relational aspects of these things, but I want to draw the attention to the course by Linnea in this regard. So she will also do a talk in a few months on the TRE talks series as well. Okay, so I heard some of your examples here. I just want to tell a little story that I often tell about two different kids. So let's imagine that these kids now are in a math class in school, and they are working on the exact same topic and the exact same tasks, and they are exactly as good in they have the same mathematical skill level, we could say. Or even this guy, who is the more angry one or frustrated one, he might even have better math skills. But now they both face a task or a problem they can solve. So now, and of course, everyone can experience that if there is a problem we can solve in any aspect of life, that it might bring on different emotions and frustration and so on. So now it's a question of how do we deal with these different emotions and frustrations that we experience. And if you look at this guy who's smiling, maybe when he faced this task that he couldn't solve, maybe he tried one more time and then one more time again. So this is typically a good self-regulation strategy, we could say, that we have a conscious way, maybe we have learned it from our parents or the teacher, that if we face a task that we want to, or that we can solve, okay, it's always good to try again. 1 time, 2 times, 3 times. And if we can't solve it, maybe we can put our hand up to draw the attention of the teacher and get some help. But now the teacher is not available. The teacher is busy with another student and can't come over right away. So that's another frustration. I'm not getting the help I need right away. So what do I do now? This is also a self-regulation type question. And so what this guy might do, the smiling guy to the right there, maybe he decides to make sure the teacher sees him. So the teacher will come to him later, and then he starts on the next task in the book. So he has several different strategies that he uses, and he can use the strategies without getting too frustrated. And forgetting the strategies, maybe he also relates to his emotion, notice that he might find it a bit boring or frustrating, but he can calm himself down and sort of have this idea that the teacher actually will come and help him. Maybe he also think it's not all that dangerous. He wants to learn the math, but it's not so dangerous if he can't do it. So, but for the other guy, he might actually have many of the same strategies, but maybe might be lacking some of them. So he also tries again on the to solve the task. He now also puts his hand up, but now he sees that the teacher can't come right away. So his frustration increases more, and he can't regulate it so well. And now he might actually try again on the next task, but he can't do that either. So now his frustration increases even more. He might perceive it as humiliating or dangerous or feel stupid or something like this. And now he takes the piece of paper, calls it up, and throws it at a friend or something like this. So what is the difference there? It's obviously what we all know as self-regulation, the brain's executive functions and self-regulation skills or capacity, we could say. And of course, everyone who knows TRE and is a TRE provider or training knows a lot about this, but I will briefly go through it anyway here for those who might not know it so well. So first of all, it's a broad set of different skills that together form our executive functions and self-regulation skills. Partly it's our capacity and skills in managing our own frustration and emotions. Noticing that they come up, noticing that maybe having a name for them, so we can, okay, now I'm getting a bit frustrated. I need maybe to figure out why I'm frustrated or find a solution to the problem that is frustrating me. And be able to think about, to recognize, maybe name the feeling, and then think of a solution or seek help to find a solution. So we have strategies. Ideally, it's a good thing to develop strategies to deal with various emotions or all the emotions. And then we have memory, our ability to retrieve the memories that we have, maybe the memory of the skills, remembering to try again, remembering to put the hand up, remembering to start writing or try to work on the next task while waiting for the teacher. So this is also a part of the self-regulation basic capacity. And of course, we might have challenges on all of these different sort of sub-skills. And then we have the ability to activate ourselves, to organize, to prioritize what we are going to work on, and actually starting to work, taking action to do the task, you could say. And then there is a modulation of effort, sustaining the effort over time, adjusting maybe either up or down depending on the sort of need in the situation for sustained effort, or sort of level of effort. And there's the ability to focus, to first of all find what to focus on and actually focusing in on what we need to focus on. Maybe, let's say, in the math tasks, to take one's focus from something else that might be distracting or something like this, and tune it in to focus on the task. And then be able to sustain that focus over time, keep it there, not take it easily anywhere else. And then also in the end, to shift the attention from what we are doing, the task we are doing, to something else that is going to happen. So anyone who have kids will recognize that this one is quite challenging for many kids. It's actually challenging for many adults. But some people find it a lot easier to tune in and sustain focus over a long time, but might actually find it very, very challenging to take the focus away to something else. Typically, children with more sort of autistic spectrum, you can call it functioning, will typically often be good at focusing on something for a long time, and they want to complete the set of tasks in the book. And that has been given to them by the teacher. And if the teacher now asks, of course, there are people with different diagnoses are different, they're different personalities and so on, so it's not equal for everyone, but typically to shift attention away from the task before it's complete, it's very challenging for some students. And that might create a problem in the shift from one activity to another. And everyone who has a kid with who watches TV or plays a computer game will recognize this thing. And even adults have a problem sometimes shifting the focus from one thing to another. So it's also about our capacity to monitor and regulate our own actions. How do we ourselves now act? So in the example of the children here, how do I modulate my actions? Or if I were the kid, how do I now act in this situation? Do I notice my impulses to act in some way, to curl my fist, to stomp sort of put it on the table hard, or throw the piece of paper and so on? Or modulating the frustration and put it into constructive actions, we could say. Obviously, this is the same for ourselves as adults. So we can just look at ourselves if we have our own child, or if you're a teacher, when we are observing this, how do I now act? What happens with my emotions? What we could say strategies do I have myself relationally to relate to the child in this situation, and so on. How do I monitor and regulate my own communication and relational actions, we could say, in this situation, to now ideally help this child? Of course, this is not always what happens. If we as adults get more frustrated, we are not helping necessarily, but that's the goal, obviously, is to help and support the child here now. So, and this capacity for self-regulation, or we could call it life mastery as well over time, is something that develops gradually over a very long time, from birth to late adulthood, actually. So even though our physical capacity sort of start to somehow slow down at some point here, our self-regulation capacity does develop over a long time, even into late adulthood, early old age, actually. So but we won't go into that in detail now. I will just briefly mention here how all of the trauma therapy and so on, that trauma theory that we all know relates to what we call attachment theory, and also more specifically what we call psychoneurobiological attachment theory. This is basically a theory that describes and uses various research from a broad field of different research traditions to explain how actually our brain and the self-regulation capacity that we have is usually influenced by our relational experiences. So what is a relational experience? If we look at this situation here with a young baby here and the mother, and now we can see that the child here looks very calm, looks safe, looks curious and interested in the mother in a quite relaxed, comfortable way, and the mother as well looks more and more sort of like she's relaxed, like she's calm, like she's curious and interested in a relaxed way in the child. And now we could probably say that because of the expression and the emotional attitude, we could say, of the mother, the child finds this a safe situation. So she might be speaking softly, quietly, and so on with a friendly voice. And this sort of now creates, we could say, a bubble, relational bubble here of the sounds, of the facial expression, of the body language and so on, that creates a sense of calm and safety for the baby. Also because the baby now looks calm and the baby is obviously now easy to relate to for the mother. So she is also probably now calmer and more comfortable because of the relationship. It might be more challenging, of course, if the baby is crying and hard to calm down and it's difficult to figure out how to help the baby. Now this is more stressful often for the mother, and now it's more up to us as the adult, a father or mother, to use our own self-regulation capacity to continue to stay, ideally now, fairly calm and problem solve, and therefore also help the child to become calm again afterwards and return to a feeling of safety and comfort. And over time, when this cycle is repeated over a long time, many years, repeatedly, of course not perfectly or without any mishaps, and obviously also with many types of situations where this is done in a sort of a imperfect way, and then what we call repair happens over time. Now this supports the development of the child's brain to develop a sort of gradually higher level of self-regulation, but also co-regulation capacity. So the capacity to interact and be a part of the social dynamic as well. And then the psychoneurobiological attachment theory says that these early relational experiences, when repeated over a long time, now has an effect on the development of what we can call a vulnerability in life. We can, if this happens in not a sort of sufficiently a good way, we will increase the vulnerability to stress and emotional stress, and then also trauma. But if this happens sort of in a good enough way, then this relationship and the relational experiences over time now will help develop the child's resilience in relation to stress and emotional stress. And the child will gradually learn how to relate to one's own stress and emotions, high and higher intensity emotions, but also other people's emotions as well. So basically what this theory says is that affect regulation now is central to human development and motivation. So we will try to maybe speed up a bit. So self-regulation is not just about the negative emotions, it's also about the positive emotions and our capacity to enter into high intensity positive emotions in play, in humor, in many different types of play and so on, and in greeting each other, experiences joy, vitality, and so on. So and this is often a missed point, we could say, in at least in schools. So of course not everywhere. Play is becoming a bigger part and has been also in many schools for a long time, but the knowledge and the understanding of the importance of play is increasing in general. And this is also very important when because in children's learning in general, because to learn we need to be curious, we need to be able to explore, we need to explore both the physical environment and the social environment, and dare to enter into the environment and take a bit of risk and meet new types of situations, new people, and so on. I like this photo because it's an old type. This in many places this doesn't happen anymore. Children being outside in the street with, of course, not anymore horses, but sort of children without adults is in many places not something you see a lot. So, so a lot of this is how we learn to manage stress, and now especially emotional, sort of relational stress in particular. So I will briefly also talk about different types of regulation. So we have, and this is might be a little bit of a new topic for some of you. A lot of, or everyone today knows about self-regulation. Co-regulation is a big topic as well. But I think it's useful to also include auto-regulation and the term regulation support. And okay, okay, some slides got dropped here, it seems. Okay, so first of all, we will look at auto-regulation and talk about that. So auto-regulation is both basically the physiological regulation, autonomous processes, and that happens at the physiological level below the self-regulation. Self-regulation is actually about our conscious attempt to regulate ourselves. And I think actually that what we do a lot in the theory is actually to allow for the auto-regulation processes to happen. Obviously, this allowing for it and letting it happen is actually something we learn to do, and that we then we consciously do it or let it happen or facilitate it. So that's a conscious sort of process. So that's a self-regulatory process, I would say. But the tremors itself and the physiological things that happen when we do TRE, that's auto-regulation, auto-regulatory processes actually. So I find this a useful distinction as, to sort of more clearly explain what we're doing with TRE. And it makes TRE not completely unique, but quite different than most other sort of psychotherapies and so on, and even most other body-oriented therapies, for instance, or not even therapies, but practices like yoga, Tai Chi. A lot of these, they are more functioning on the self-regulation level and not including the auto-regulation level to the degree that TRE is doing, which is the main point of TRE, is to to allow for the autoregulation processes to occur, including that as in the self-regulation processes. And then we have co-regulation, how we sort of now interact and how we influence each other fairly, we could say, equally in situations, I would say, where we have an equal responsibility and equal level of authority and fairly equal capacity. Everything doesn't have to be exactly equal, obviously, but more like adult to adult, or a safe, playful, vital child with an adult in a play type situation. But the term regulation support, I find this very helpful to explain the role of the adults, of us adults, in situations where the child is outside of their own capacity to regulate. So basically, when the child now is sort of in this red space, we could say, the emotions are too strong for the child to relate to them or sort of to regulate them in a sufficient way for him or herself, and needs the support of the adult to now regulate. So I find these sort of distinctions of the different types of regulation very, very helpful. So I think we will quickly move forward to be able to talk about TRE. I see that the time is running. So I will briefly mention this perspective spiral. So the purpose of the perspective spiral is that we in our communication try to communicate in such a way that first of all we understand the situation and the child more precisely, and ideally now to avoid misunderstandings in the situation, because a lot of frustration, a lot of conflict, and the intensity in situations where we have disagreements and so on happens because of misunderstandings, that we have an insufficient understanding of what is going on in the situation. So it's an important point. And then the second point of this model is to help the child feel that we as the adult understand and take the child seriously, to help the child feel understood through what we call perspective taking communication. And then also when we now properly understand the situation and the child better, now we can make better, take better and more precise measures, and you could say, in the situation, and adapt our decisions and so on better to the situation and to the child. And also over time to help the child develop a vocabulary for the situation, the relationship, and their inner experience, thoughts, feelings, and opinions, and so on. Mary, you had your hand up. You want to ask a question, or?
Yes. Yes, it was to auto-regulation and self-regulation. It's how you understand this, what this is. You made the comparison that TRE is doing auto-regulation.
We are doing both self-regulation and auto-regulation. And so it's not only one of them. So as TRE providers, we also do co-regulation and regulation support as well. But TRE, in the way I think about it at least, is that we allow for the body's natural auto-regulation processes to occur, and the tremoring is one of those autonomous processes that we facilitate.
Yes, and like, but what do you understand? Like, how do you understand auto-regulation?
So it depends what you mean with the question, but basically auto-regulation are more about the physiological processes that either activate us. So, for instance, the orienting response is an autonomous process that more or less happens if we hear a big bang or something dangerous occurs. Or if we now have a heightened physiological response to the perceived danger or a potential danger, and then if there's a fight-flight response happening, all of those are physiological responses that happens not on a conscious level, but on an autonomous physiological level. So the body is sort of regulating this without our immediate conscious decisions, you could say. So,
okay,
and that's
I understand this now.
Yeah. Okay.
And what do you understand? Like, how do you see a self-regulation?
So self-regulation is when we apply our conscious strategies to influence ourselves. So, for instance, let's say I now I put myself in a sort of meditative position. I direct my awareness to my body, maybe to the contact of my feet against the floor. Maybe I observe my breathing, and I consciously maintain this focus over some time. If my focus goes away and I notice it, I consciously bring it back, and so on. All of these are conscious processes that I do directed at myself to influence my own self and the my physiology and emotions and so on.
Yeah, so, now I understand. Thank you.
Great.
Thanks.
So we could see that in TRE, when we do the exercises, when we put ourselves in the different positions and so on, all of those are self-directed actions that are meant to facilitate something in ourselves. So we could say that those are self-regulatory, but then we are facilitating the tremors, which are now autonomous processes that happens that we don't consciously do. So we sort of access the auto-regulation through these techniques, you could say. Okay, so we will now briefly discuss this model. It consists of 4 different or 5 phases. So we'll just talk about the 3 first. And the first is the prepare and involve phase. Let's say we now want to turn off a computer or get home from the swimming pool. It's now often helpful to prepare the child 5 minutes before, an hour before, or at some time frame before we start. Lots of other things we can do as well, but we won't cover that in this talk. And now, okay, again, we missed a slide here for some reason. Okay, something happened with these slides. The next phase that we didn't find there is a lead and stabilize phase. So now we actually want to get out of the pool and go home, or turn off the computer and go to bed or to the bathroom to brush the teeth and so on. So that's the second phase that we just talked about, even though we didn't find the correct slide. But so often when we do these 2 first phases fairly well, we don't get such a big, strong reactions there in this phase. But still, it might happen. With children with more challenges, with more trauma, younger kids, with maybe children who are in foster care or have some type of life stress, we could say, or existential life stress situation, or it might be a situation that sort of naturally involves fear or pain. Could be something at the doctor, like the ER, or a dentist, or an accident that happens outside. Now we might enter into this 3rd phase. Sometimes it's about a conflict, but other times it's just about the child being afraid or have pain or something like this. So, and now a lot of different things might happen. The child might be very frustrated or have very strong emotions. be angry, be afraid, want to get away from the situation, withdraw, or scream or cry, and so on, and need comforting. So I will, and this now, of course, there are lots of things we can do with communication, primarily to show understanding for the child's experience, for what the child experienced, and the emotions and feelings and thoughts of the child in the situation. So using various types of what you can call perspective-taking communication is sort of, in general, the most advised communication strategy here in this phase. Or waiting as well, and so on. And of course, there are many different challenges in this phase that we won't discuss. What we will primarily focus on is how TRE and the neurogenic tremors actually can help us here now in this phase, and understanding some of the things that we experience or the child experience, like a very intense crying, or actually tremors will occur often in kids in this phase when they have very intense emotions. For instance, I have an 8-year-old kid myself. When he was maybe 2 or 3 years old, if he was running towards the street where it's not allowed to go because of the cars and so on, so which something he did a few times when he was very, very angry for something. And of course, we have to stop him and lift him up, and so on. And now I could actually see that he was so angry that he was tremoring in his body. Of course, knowing TRE, knowing what the tremors are and why they are helpful and important, just knowing that as a father in this case makes it more understandable. It makes it safe for me because I know it's good for him in this situation, and I can now, first of all, avoid doing anything to stop the tremors. I can even do some things to maybe support them, or just allow them to stay there. So, and then maybe also afterwards, after such a situation, we can now also talk about why is the body tremoring, why it's good. It can also be about crying, what crying is. Crying is basically do have the same function as the tremoring to release the autonomous activation that happens in the body in strong emotional episodes, and helps our physiology to regulate down. So most people have experienced that after crying, one feels better, maybe lighter in the body, and have a sense of better breathing and so on. So when we know this, the child might be crying very intensely. So rather than trying to stop it, we can actually now just be with the child. Maybe if the child wants to sit on the lap, we can just sit there with the child, and maybe say things like, oh yeah, it's okay to cry, or actually it's good actually to cry. And sometimes I've said to my own son, yeah, it's good actually to get the last piece of crying out. And also we talk about how it's better to allow the crying to continue the little extra bit, rather than trying to stop it or push it back in. What some adults do is that they, when sort of it gets a bit further down, very often they think that the crying is the problem, that the child is crying because the child sort of experiencing something that is bad. And that might be the case, that the child experienced something that was bad, but the crying is actually something that helps the child, and not something that is directly connected to the bad thing. It is actually what helps the child calm down again, and then sometimes also to later on to accept maybe some type of limit that was set, or relating to another child in a more socially engaged way, rather than continuing a conflict, or to solve a conflict with another child afterwards, and to repair more easily if the crying has been allowed to sort of to continue and fully sort of do its job, we could say. So, so these are some ideas from sort of an everyday type of situation. So I will also mention situations, for instance, from the ER and the dentist. So since I had talked quite a lot with my son about the tremors, why they are there, why they are good, and it's better to sort of allow the tremors to happen if one feels them than to suppress them, and the same with the crying. So there was this one episode at ER where he had, when he was maybe 4, in the kindergarten, he had an accident, so he got quite a big cut in the finger, and it was sort of a bit crushed even. From a sort of a metal lid on a crate that has fallen down on his hand, because he had sort of entered a room where he wasn't supposed to be, and with a friend gone into a big crate and for the toys, and then he was crying a lot and so on, but gradually calmed down. And in the kindergarten, they had put a band-aid on his finger, and now we were at the ER, so they wanted to look at it. And the first doctor that arrives, a woman, she now sort of just goes over to him and just sort of okay, we need to take the band-aid off, and now she sort of pull on the band-aid and the finger, and he sort of because he has a lot of pain, and start crying very intensely, and pulls the hand back so she can't do anything with it. And so we could say she was not very attuned. She wasn't trying to tune into him or relate to him. She just started with the finger right away. And what she did do well is actually to recognize that she wasn't very good at this thing with kids. So that's actually what she said. She said, okay, I'm not very good at this. I will find someone else. So then we waited a bit, but he was crying now very, very intensely, because he had pain from the accident, and now she also had pulled on the finger. So, and actually there was actually a small piece of the bone that also was a bit loose, apparently. So now this other doctor, or sort of a nurse, comes in, and she talks with him. She is very calm. She sounds very friendly. And so she engages him socially in a safety-creating way. And now she also asks, can I look at your finger? And she puts her own finger up, and he puts his finger up, and she just looks at it a bit, sort of looking a bit like this, and then a little bit like that, and sort of asks, is it very painful, and so on. Okay, so she just connects and creates safety around her presence around the finger. And then she asked, I would really like to take off the band-aid. Is it okay if I touch it? I will do it very carefully. So she sort of asks him about it and gradually moves closer to this idea of, and then, okay. And then she actually starts taking this band-aid off, and he's able to hold the finger there. But now his leg starts to tremor. So I can actually show you, I did a small video of this as well. So can you see this? So this is his leg tremoring, you could say, at the dentist. You can also hear them talking.
Nej. Går det bra?
So he is asking a question here about the blood and so on, and you can hear his voice. He's a little bit holding the breath and so on. But just previous to this other episode with the other doctor happened, and then he was crying a lot and coughing, and I was really sort of helping him sort of through that. And sort of after a few minutes of the very intense crying and coughing and this, now he sort of really relaxed and was calm again and was more ready when this next person arrived, actually. So he had sort of, we could say that he had a very intense emotional reaction, sort of high up here, and through the crying and the coughing and doing some tremoring, actually more happening just by itself and sort of being supported then by me. All of these activations seemed to calm down quite a lot, and he was now more here. And when the next nurse now arrived, he was now more ready to deal with this situation. Okay, so we are a little bit running out of time here, I see, but we have a few more minutes. So my goal was just to illustrate how we can use our understanding of TRE in relationships with children, and how I use these models that are more created to teach conflict resolution and regulation support, and how this fits with our understanding of TRE and the tremors, neurogenic tremors, and the physiological regulation and so on. So if anyone have any questions or anything like this, it could be possible to ask any questions or make comments or anything at this point. You can either unmute if you like, or you can write in the chat. Okay, so if there are no questions at this point, I think we can at least end the recording. So what I would like to say is that this talk and the TRE session that we had planned was just announced 4 days ago or 5 days ago. So what we decided to do with the TRE session is that we, because of the group size and many of those who signed up have actually decided to just have the recording because they were too busy with their schedules and so on. So we have decided to postpone the TRE session to the 20th of February. So if anyone of you have signed up, you can either just participate then and get the recording, or we will also refund the payment if you want that too. So yeah, I would like to thank you for participating. And if you have any questions at a later point regarding this, you can just send me an email if you like. If anyone wants to learn more about this topic, about developmentally supportive conflict resolution, I also have a course that is focused particularly on the practical aspects of that, which is also now available in English as an online course. And I will also do I've done a training in Norwegian, teaching a training on this for the last 10 years. It's a 12-day training stretching over approximately 1 year. And most of the attendees are either working in schools or kindergartens, or some are parents as well. So and that training will also happen in English, possibly starting in the autumn, but yeah, depends on a few factors at the exact starting time. Mary, you have another question? Mary, do you want to say something? I cannot hear you. Okay, there might be. Ah, there you are. Okay. Oh, now I could hear something, I think.
You can hear me?
Now I can hear you.
Yes. Okay. Did I understand this right, that the TRE session, which would start in a quarter an hour, is on the 20th February?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. I just wanted to capture. Okay. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. Then I would like to thank you very much for participating, and maybe we'll see you again in a future call. We have 3 calls with David Berselli this term, and also a few other ones as well. So we look forward to that as well. So, okay, bye-bye.